done with the hopper bottom. That is a fantastic construction. You got solid tubing, heavy wall tubing everywhere. You got 1/8 inch metal, or that's at least 100 thousandths metal, versus the grain bin companies themselves. They'll use sheet metal. They'll use the 16 gauge, which is 60 thousandths, where this is 100 thousandths, almost twice as thick. And they'll just have sheet metal legs here as a column, not as a complete tubing. You don't get heavy tubing. This is a hell of a hopper bottom. But we had nothing but a nightmare problem because we had a full auger coming right into the bottom. When the auger shuts off, the corn fills the hopper up. When the auger starts, you get that slug of corn going. 20% corn is no big deal. 28% corn does not flow very good. It's soft, it's sticky, it's rubbery. And so we put a piece of plywood in there to cover most of that with just a little notch taken out the back side, and you just make that notch fit the size so it flows enough corn to refill the dryer within your timer setting of refilling. You don't want it to have to take 40 minutes of run time to keep up with the dryer. You want it to only run for 5, 6, 7 minutes. And so when it's running, it's not going to plug. It's when it sits. So that other guys have taken that flighting and peeled like the outside 1/2 inch or inch off the flighting, and then you got full flighting up in the tube, and that slowed down the rate of corn coming into that tube. Anything like that, because we went through several $100s worth of belts last year because it would be working. You come back and now the dryer shut off. You climb up, the belts are gone. Well, run to town, $60 worth of belts, put them on, run for a couple days, come back, they're burnt off again. You're like, what the crap? Well, then we found that out, and then when we talked to some neighbors about it, they're like, oh yeah, we had to do that years ago, you know. And so this is one of them things that instead of you having to find it out on your own and then talk to your neighbors, and they're just like, well, duh, it maybe save a learning step. The other thing is how the dryer works. So the corn, remember the corn is moving down. It's just creeping down this column, you know, into the unload system. So it's creeping down the unload system, but it's unloading at a high speed of 27. My low speed should be right around 12 or 13, somewhere right around there. You want them fairly tight. What happens is so it's reading 15.6 coming out of the dryer. It's a little on the dry side, but the dryer sat overnight. Give it some time, and it will slowly creep up. We don't want to make our high speed like a 70 and our low speed a 12, because then what's going to happen is it's just going to, you can see the humidity, the dark gray versus the light gray on the dryer. That, as that dryer gets warming up, that humidity will start to move up the sides of the sheets. You don't want to be down at 15.5 running at an 80, because that column of grain is going to come down so fast it won't have any time at all to get heat. That's all we're doing. All the dryer's doing is getting the corn up to a desired temperature. That desired temperature, you know, let's say we're coming out at 110 or 120 degrees. That's our goal. Well, it takes time to get there. So if your high speed's at an 80, that column is coming down so fast, it doesn't have time. Then what's going to happen is you're going to get this is just going to climb when that wet corn finally gets down there. That's going to climb. And then this is going to hit low speed, but it's still going to take time. So then this is going to actually go higher than your goal. You're going to be at 17, 18% here for a while, depending on the dryer and your capacities. You might be there, you might be dumping 18% corn in your bin for a half hour to an hour. Finally, at low speed, it's going to get caught up. Now, all that wet corn at the top has plenty of time to dry. In fact, it's going to get a little too dry because you're stuck on low speed for too long because of all the wet corn at the bottom. So what's going to happen is that over dry corn is going to hit the bottom. it's going to kick you into high speed. High speed's going to jump up to 80, and it's going to do it all over again. So save yourself a whole lot of time and hassle, and leave your high speed kind of low and your low speed where your minimum, and keep them close. You can see right now at 16, it's running medium speed. It's not on high and it's not on low. There, click back to high. So that's how it should work. That's how it should work. It should hunt to high for a little bit and then click to medium. It should be kind of in that medium to high. And if you change hybrids and you were, your wet bin's full of 20% corn and now you're bringing in 24% corn, now it might take some time. As that wet corn hits the dryer, you might end up running low speed for a while till that gets caught up. Then it will run itself back to medium and high. That was a huge pain in the butt to learn. We were back here, I don't know how many times I was adjusting it, because you'd have it on high because it's 15%, so you're unloading fast, and Dad, that thing is just eating corn like crazy. And then you'd come back an hour later and it's 18% dump, and you're like, son of a bucket, you piece of crap. And so just a tip and trick, not much of a trick, just a heads up kind of deal. Keep them numbered, keep that window tight between high speed and low speed, and the dryer works beautiful. I'll be back here because of noise. We got a pretty hard wind coming out of the north, and it's trying to be a little bit sleety. The high-low burn of the dryer. Make sure you work it, that it's working. There, it just went to low. Take advantage of that. That corn kernel can only absorb heat so fast. With what it does is on that low burn is you're saving gas. So you'll watch the plenum temperature just drop. So you got that 3-4 seconds of basically no gas being burnt, just enough to maintain a flame, and that's 3 or 4 seconds, which turns out to be 20% of the time that you're not burning much fuel. You're just allowing time for that heat in the chamber to get through the corn. You want to keep that, like 3-4 seconds off, high burn to around 8 to 10 seconds on, and you kind of dial them in with the thermostat, and then you match that to your unloading speed, and that helps with the efficiency of the dryer. When we first got the dryer, and even this year, we're having problems with that high-low, and I thought, no big deal, I'll just leave the plenum go like a normal like the old Toxic dryer. And boy howdy did I pay for it. That thing sucked that tank down so fast it wasn't even funny. Well, I mean, you went through way more than 20% more fuel. It was crazy. It was just crazy how much more fuel I went through. But yeah, get that high-low system dialed in. I got about almost 30 pounds on the high side, running about 3 pounds of LP pressure on the low side, and that's all I can think of now. Them 3 things were big headaches for me, with a little bit of money cost for me. And always have good ventilation. Now that we're dumping, I got to turn the fan back on. I shut it off because we were getting some real humid weather. But you gotta, if you're dumping hot corn, you have to have the fan on. And you see a little tiny bit, well, it's tough with the gray background. Kind of funny how them trees are getting frosted. You got to get that hot air out of there, otherwise that humidity sits in there and then you get grain spoilage. So make sure you got plenty of fan on these bins. If you're converting an old bin like this, talk to a company. It's not hard for them to tell you what size fan you need. That's no big deal at all. But you got to have that air moving to get that humidity out, otherwise you'll ruin a bin of corn pretty easy. So guys, I'm going to leave it right there, and thanks for watching, thanks for listening. For you other corn dryers and soybean dryers, drop comments below on what's worked for you, some little things that saved your butt now and again. safety switches. Everything has a safety switch. There's a fill timer. If this bin plugs or runs empty, it only runs for a few minutes and it shuts down. There is a flap on the end of the dryer on the top of the unload. If this auger quits, if the bin gets full, I got the tube down in the bin several feet. So if that got full, when I wasn't here, it would plug this auger, corn would build up a little bit, and it would shut the dryer down because corn would build up down here. There's a couple other, someday it'd be nice to have a shutdown safety on the bins. When I put up real bins, I'll have shutdowns for fill level on the bins themselves too. But everything has safety things on it, so you can't have too much of a mess.